We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
All right, you on camera? Yeah, hello everybody. Hello. As you can see, Joelle is tied up in traffic at this time, and so I was asked to sit in and be the voice for Joy in My House, an inspiration to us all. I'm trying to find the words that they usually open up, but I'm just winging it. But anyway, thank you once again for being here, Joy in My House, where Lolita?
Yes, a radio reality show where nothing is left unsaid and no one is insignificant who says it.
Exactly.
And I'm so excited that you are with me today. You know, God does things. He shakes things up. He lets us know that He's in control. So today I think it's going to be pretty cool. We'll hang in there until Joel shows up, you know.
Exactly. And, for those who evidently was an accident on the freeway.
Oh, there was?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay,
I believe
I thought you said that the parade was going on.
Well, that's one thing, but where the highway that he's on, I believe it was an accident.
Oh, okay.
So it's that stop and go parking lot
Yep.
type situation for him. So hopefully he'll be here shortly.
That's
and he
all right.
wasn't directly involved in the accident itself.
Well, I'm glad you're with us. So how was your week?
It was
Are you still in school?
No, school ended. The spring semester ended on the 10th of June.
Good.
Classes passed. Passed my classes.
All
so.
right.
Summer will start in June the 22nd.
Okay. So what are you taking over the summer?
English.
Oh.
Yeah. English. The English teacher that I have, Sarah Hicks, wonderful woman. Her and I, what we have in common is our type of music. She's a punk rocker, and so am I.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Boy, you wear all kinds of hats.
Yeah, she got the tattoos, the color hair, and stuff like that. And she allows us to really express ourselves as far as English, as long as we use
you can have a lot of
English.
reading. You can have a lot of reading to do.
Well, I told her I told her I'm not trying to be a writer, so she understands that.
She
but
does, huh?
Yeah, and the journals that she has us write. She doesn't want us to tell the story. She already knows the story, but own opinion about the journal that we read, the article that we read, and so on. And pretty good. And our history class was pretty easy. Unfortunately, at the hands of Professor Ross's mother taking ill. Okay. So he had to leave the semester early, right before it ended. Right. So instead of us having to take the finals in class, he let us take the final exam home.
Well, that was good.
And do it there and just email him. So I Googled everything.
And he can tell it too. I bet you. We're not suggesting that you students don't do that. Textbooks.
But I Google everything. Who was the first black woman to do what? Okay, gonna Google that.
Okay, well, that's all right.
What happened? Did this, that, or other thing happen in 1963? Let me see.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. Well, I want to kind of recap last week. I know you're off camera.
Yes.
But you're always been so faithful, and Peter and the whole crew here. We're just happy to be here today. And last week we had a good friend of ours on, Kathy Taylor, and Kathy has a new book out called Mending Hearts for Hurting Moms, and it's a ministry to mothers who have had trouble with their kids. Yeah. Which we also want to state fathers too. There is a lot of ministries out there for hurting kids. We know we have the addictive programs for sexually abused people and addictions and things like that, but also to have a place for parents to come along. Now, I know you raised your daughter by yourself.
Yes. I was fortunate enough to win full custody of my daughter.
Right.
And
that picture was beautiful.
Yeah. That was 1994.
And how old was she when you got her?
3 years old, and I was 38 at the time.
Right.
And that's when I first realized and came to the conscious realization that God is real. Right. Because during one of my hourly visits at social services, being from Pennsylvania and where I was at, we had a blizzard. I mean, it was a terrible storm, and I got to arrive from work halfway there, and I was the only crazy person walking in this blizzard, and God sent this white man in a car coming in the opposite direction. He saw me from
Did you have your daughter with you?
No, I was on my way to the facility for my hourly visit.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I already knew that I wasn't going to make it on time because I was walking.
Yeah.
So he did a U-turn and came over on my side and asked me where I was going. I told him where I was going, and he drove me to the front door. And everybody who was supposed to be there was there.
Wow!
So I could have easily
turned around and give it up.
Say, well, the storm, man. I ain't trying to go. I had no way. Blah blah blah.
Well, see, the reason why I asked you about you is because I think a lot of times people don't realize the fathers are very much Father's Day is coming up next week.
Yes.
But people don't realize that there are a lot of men that want to be in their children's lives.
Exactly.
And you go through a lot of struggles too.
Exactly. And
so it's not just the mothers and stuff, but it's the fathers too who go through stuff.
And having a daughter, at that time, wasn't a regular thing for the system to allow the father to have custody of his daughter.
Did they have support for you? Did they have support for you?
Not really. God made that support because during my hourly visits with my daughter at the end, she showed insecurity by putting her thumb in her mouth and playing with her hair. So the woman who was in charge of my case, I asked, I said, is there any way that I can let my daughter know in between visits that she will see me? And evidently they talked about it.
Okay.
And they allowed me to not only know where she lived with these people, but they also gave me the phone number, which is not
something that they usually do.
No, that's a cardinal rule. They do not allow the biological parents to know where their children live or even have any contact. And it showed a difference. It showed, that she was cool. She knew that she was going to see her dad. So
my hat goes off to you. And for the many parents out there, I've raised 3 sons. My husband and I weren't together, but I had a lot of the hands-on, but he was around. So I do want to just put that out there that there are. But Kathy does have this ministry, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. And we had a really blessed time last week.
Yes, y'all did.
So we have a special guest today too that's going to talk about homeless. And I didn't have a chance to get to know Shannon, but coming in today, we talked a little bit. And so, if Joel is not back in time, we're just going to kind of open it up because I think you have some insight into being homeless. I've never been homeless before, but that's the main thing God commissions. He talks about the homeless, the widow, and the orphans, and we want to do every other kind of ministry. It's good to go to Africa, it's good to go to Haiti, it's good to go to all these other countries that need us in India, but we have a lot of stuff in our own backyards that I think we're overseeing.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, because at the vets.
Yes.
So why don't you give us all the phone numbers, brother, because you know.
For those who are listening, if you want to call in, just call on, but you can see us on Facebook, Live 365, iTunes Radio on the R&B.
All right.
Stitcher Radio and Ustream TV. For those who may want to even call in, the phone number is 323-473-3100.
There you go.
And I guess we'll be back and with our guests.
With
Joy in My House.
Do you or does someone you know have sickle cell disease? Have you heard about the EPIC study? It's an international research study evaluating an investigational drug aimed at shortening the duration of painful crisis. And with over 50 sites in the US, there may be a site near you. To learn more and to find out if the EPIC study is right for you, visit www.theepicstudy.com.
SoCal NOMA, the Southern California chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects, is hosting its 6th annual 3-day summer camp on 3 consecutive Saturdays in August, August 1st, August 8th, and August 15th, for young people ages 10 through 16. Campers will enjoy a 1-day field trip to iconic architectural buildings throughout Los Angeles and 2 days of hands-on building design experiences, including how to use a 3-dimensional computer software program. The total cost of the camp is just $100 per camper and includes lunch, snacks, and it lasts all day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. To learn more and to register, please go to SoCalNOMA.org. That's SoCalNOMA.org and click on the Camp NOMA page. SoCal NOMA, proud sponsors of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Lolita, and you're welcome back to Joy in My House, a celebrated ministry for those who are broken and who have hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I am here with my guest today, Shannon James. And Shannon, why don't you tell us the name of your ministry?
Hi, thank you guys for having me on. First of all, I feel really blessed to be here, and I am the founder of Beacon for Him Ministries. We're a homeless outreach in Long Beach.
Wow, and how long have you had the ministry? How long have you been there?
We've only been, so we're now leasing a church where we're able to really serve the community in a more dignified way, but before that, God had us in Lincoln Park.
And where is Lincoln Park?
Lincoln Park is sort of in the heart of downtown Long Beach, and it has really become a hub for homeless.
Okay.
A lot of people hang out there. You have a lot of groups dropping off food there, and God kind of led us there to begin with.
Well, I remember one day my son and I, in fact, last year was my birthday, and we had some food, and I had some carry-on food. Now, I was told that you cannot feed the homeless in Long Beach. It's against the law.
It is. We actually got citations. The group of us who founded the ministry were feeding people in Lincoln Park on a regular basis. On Monday mornings, we would go, and we kind of set up a soup kitchen in the park. And the Long Beach PD did not like us. The city did not like us because we were kind of drawing quite a crowd.
I guess so, yeah.
And what happens is that the unfortunate part of that is a lot of litter gets left behind, and it's not necessarily the most dignified way we can serve people. God had us there, though, to learn about who these people were.
Right.
But after the citations and what the enemy would have destroy us or discourage us, God used to help reroute us.
Okay.
And it was then that we started looking for a building to do ministry out of, and God
so if you're
provides.
In a building, you can do it.
And we found a church, and it was the way God wanted it. He opened every door that was closed before, and we're in a church now, and we're not only serving the homeless, we offer Bible studies, and we launched Celebrate Recovery with
awesome.
The help of Kathy Taylor, who was here last week.
Right.
So we see lives really just being changed and transformed, and doing God's just doing his thing. It's a joy to see.
Well, so before you go any further, so you're saying that the city of Long Beach will not allow or any organization to feed the homeless outdoors in certain areas because of certain city ordinance?
Sure. Our citations were for food service without a permit.
Right.
So and they're actually misdemeanor citations, and so they're not just a slap on the wrist. I think they should be taken a little seriously. We, in fact, though, God, because we were doing it in God's honor and favor, we were praying for people. God gave us a way out, and we an attorney took on our case pro bono, and all of our citations were dismissed.
Okay.
So amen.
Yeah.
Well, before we go on, Joel is here.
Yeah, Joel is here. But is that the park over there where the library
exactly.
is? And City Hall? They even got a little dog park there.
Yes,
as well.
exactly. You know exactly where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to a quick break.
Another break. Hey.
Yeah, we're going to go to a little break. So so this way we can bring the one and only Joel. And I'm just glad that God had him safe, because I understand traffic isn't nice out there today.
All right.
So once again, you're listening we listen to Joy in My House, and we'll be right back in a few.
Hey, shout us out. What's the count? Tune in to WDC Radio with me, Ron Dozier, your host, a.k.a. I Am WDC, on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, as we cover aspects of sickle cell trait, interviews with doctors, nurses, caregivers, and those living with sickle cell. So be sure to tune in every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, on WDC Radio, exclusively here on LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez.
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
A reality show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who says it.
Exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, I'm Ro Williams, and I would like to invite you to join GospelRhythms.com every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our show, GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio. Join us as we celebrate Christians around the world in all genres of entertainment, as well as highlight interest stories on men and women who are making a difference and impacting their community. So don't forget to tune in to GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes under R&B or watch us live on Ustream TV. We are reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio on LATalkLive.com. We're more than just talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality radio show with a touch of recovery. A reality radio show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who shares.
I'm joined here by my co-host and recording artist, Lolita Robinson.
Well, welcome here. I know you've had quite a morning, you know.
It's always
really interesting.
LA traffic.
Huh?
LA
yeah,
traffic.
Really.
Gotta love it.
Well, you know what I love about it is that you're surrendering. You know, you on the phone, you said, Lolita, look, you might have to open up the show, but you know what? God's in control, and He's been teaching us, hasn't he?
He really has, especially in my not only just with the show, but just in my life in general.
Right.
And as I get an opportunity to read our guest today, Shannon.
Can't wait to hear the rest of her story.
I get to see it firsthand, how God really works in His time,
right,
not in ours. And
that's right.
The times we try to manipulate and control, and I'm trying to run the red lights, and it's like it's a red light from afar, so I know I can't make it, so I have to just slow down.
Yeah, He says, don't serve me and disobey me now.
That's right.
You got to serve me and do what I tell you to do, right? But before we go on, I want to say a word to Tricia Mangrant. You know, why did you? She
Tricia Mangrant co-hosts GospelRhythms.com with Ro Williams, and the other day I was informed that she suffered a mild stroke.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
So our prayers go out to her and her family, and hopefully a speedy recovery.
Yeah, and to Ro too, because I just love their intro and stuff. So our hearts go out to you and our prayers. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being a part of the joy that we have in our house here on Joy in My House. On the network's website is www.latalklive.com. Know that you can link up with us. Find us on Facebook /Joy in My House. You can also tweet us with any questions or comments for ourselves or our guests.
Right.
On Twitter.com /Joy in My House. You can also find us on Instagram and follow us on Instagram.com /Joy in My House.
Your buddy took care of it. Van knew to say everything, okay.
But I did want to get into our family of origin for Shannon. Having had the opportunity to read your testimony, you have a very strong and powerful testimony, so why don't we go right into it? We met through Kathy Taylor, which was on the show previously, and she had her book launch and is doing amazing stuff for the ministry, now her own ministry, but Celebrate Recovery. But you were born in Torrance, but you were a miracle baby from the beginning, because you saw a couple of miracles in your life through prayer. Tell us about as you were a baby and then as a young kid.
She wouldn't, but what they told you, right? You wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember unless it was passed down through my parents and grandparents. But I was raised in Torrance Foursquare Church. It's a very Pentecostal church where laying hands on and prayer is kind of the way they do things. So I grew up in that atmosphere. Well, when I was only 6 months old, I had developed double hernias, which I guess were quite painful. I don't remember, but they took me in because that was what you did. You went to the Lord. And they took me to the doctor, and the doctor said I would have to have surgery. Parents were scared, as any parent would be, to have surgery on a 6-month-old. And I was miraculously healed. The doctors were baffled. They took me back to the doctor, and the hernias were gone after the laying of hands on and prayer. And so I love to hear that story because I know God was present and had his hand on me as an infant. And then again, as I grew up and started to try and walk, I had a foot that was turned severely. Clubfoot, yes. And they took me again to a prayer meeting where my grandfather, who was a huge part of my life, led this prayer ministry, and my foot was straightened. And so those things are just testament of a living God, a God who still does miracles even in this day. We read about those miracles in the Bible, but sometimes
where are they today?
We see God's hand at work even today.
That's beautiful. So from the very beginning, you were being brought up in the faith that you're going to need a lot of faith for what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I am so blessed to have that foundation, even if I did turn away from it at some time in my life.
Okay.
And we're going to touch on that because you were a church-going family.
Mother and father, or?
Yeah. Mother and father raised, it was a family affair at Torrance Foursquare Church. Great-grandma played the piano. Grandpa played the trumpet. So it was, it was a family thing there. My cousins all went there. We were raised, to know who God was. I have to touch on a little bit, though. My relationship with God didn't develop until I was older. What I learned in church, from my own perspective, I guess I was afraid of God. When I thought that this thing with God was you have to be good in order to serve this God, and your life needs to look perfect. And when I was not being good, I felt like I needed to hide and turn away. And so that's where I got in trouble later in life.
And we're going to touch on that because you said you were a pretty shy girl through your adolescence.
Yes.
And right about 11 years old, your family started to fall apart.
Yeah. You have mom, siblings?
Yeah, two brothers, two younger brothers.
Where are you in the lineup?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. Yes. Oh boy, so that's the hardest place to be, the most responsible.
Sure.
All of the training goes on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so.
But yes, so your mother's younger brother had an overdose, and your dad's work started to slow down. So both of them started going into a deep depression.
Yeah, I feel like that my mom and dad hit hard times. And even though you were raised in faith, sometimes when we hit those hard times, we forget to call on that God that brought us through so many other times. But depression is real, and it can take over. And I just felt things starting to unravel.
Did your uncle die?
My uncle died of an overdose.
That was her younger brother? Or?
It was my mother's younger brother.
Wow. Well, it's true. The scripture talks about the sower of the seed. You know, when the trials and tribulations come, it can choke the seed, the cares of life. It does get hard. I'm glad you said that. Even as believers, we come across some really heavy things.
We struggle, and we have to constantly be redirected back to, I do it still. We're human. So we can, when we get confronted with this problem, I try A, B, and C my way. And then I finally am like, okay, let me try God's way. And then I'm like, why didn't I do that first? But it's our human nature to try to figure it all out. But, we serve a big God, and he has been so gracious enough to seek me out when I turn away.
Well, that's good. But you were talking about the father being depressed too?
Yeah, and the family lost his home.
Yeah, we were homeless. Thank God we have family, because I've now in doing ministry, I see that there's a lot of these people that become homeless, they've lost contact with family. And so when we lost our home, we moved in with grandparents.
Because of your father's work, he lost his job?
Yeah, it slowed down, lost his job. We then were left without a home. We moved into grandparents' house, my dad's parents, and for some reason I was only 12, so I didn't understand all the inner workings of what was going on. But that didn't work out. And then we moved in with my mom's parents. And so
that's a lot of people. That's 5 people.
Yeah, we had a family having to move in.
And what about you? What you were going through, leaving your friends and school? What was going on then?
It was tough. Yeah, I was scared. I was a shy girl. I had to start over and making friends. I'm sorry, I wasn't 12 at that time. I was 15. I was going to sophomore year, starting a new school, and so that's tough to do, And so, and I'll get more into my testimony, but I found, I sought out alcohol to kind of numb, I guess, and it became a weekend thing, diving into alcohol and turning away from God, which started a disastrous path in my life.
And that's what we're going to touch on next, because when your family started getting back up on your feet, you ended up going back to the school that you were taken out of, but with all sorts of insecurities, all sorts of, you said fears.
Yes.
And you sought out a boyfriend. Now, somehow the boyfriend made you feel secure. Let's talk about that, because this is, about codependency now.
Right.
Because of recovery, but let's touch on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize these things about codependency. I think many of us have codependencies, but there's just no label for it, so we don't understand it. So for me, codependency, I sought out a boyfriend because it made me feel safe.
Now, you were in high school?
In high school.
And you were still drinking. I wondered, how did you get introduced to the alcohol, too? Did somebody, you just started taking sips out of your mother's cabinet or your
No, the group of friends that I hung with, it was sort of the thing to do.
Okay, so you're doing this. You're doing the drinking, then you found the boyfriend, okay.
Yeah, so, it just turned into, my life started taking this path that I was using a boyfriend and using alcohol to kind of fill the space that I felt was missing in me.
What was it supposed to fill?
There's a void in all of us. I've realized this now. Hindsight's 20/20. I realize there's a void in all of us, and we all seek to fill that void. We just use different things, shopping or food or alcohol or drugs, and that void is there for us to seek God.
Well, somebody's going to ask you as a Christian, how come God didn't fill that for you?
Sure.
Did you understand as a kid?
I didn't. See, my relationship wasn't there with him. It was more like God's up there, I'm down here. Right. There was no Celebrate Recovery taught me personal relationship, and it taught me that we serve a God of mercy and of grace. And when we are doing those things and turning away from him, he wants us to turn towards him. And his kindness and his love is what draws us into relationship with him. But in my head was, he was mad at me.
So you saw a lot of power, I guess, as a child in Pentecost.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of power. There's a lot of coming against the enemy. There's a lot of binding him. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So as a kid, you probably saw him as more powerful, not so much loving.
Yes. You know what? You hit the nail on the head. I think I saw him as powerful. I knew him as powerful. And I also feel that there's a doctrine of a little bit of fear, because you learn very much about heaven and hell. You learn about, there's heaven and there's hell, and if you are not good, you're going to hell. And so there's a fear factor in there that I think, we do need to be in awe of that.
Right.
But that should not be our driving force in seeking God. Our driving force in seeking him should be his mercy and his love in our lives and his grace, and then turning and showing that to others.
Very well.
Because you talk about the boyfriend, but you also mention how he wasn't even good to you. He actually cheated on you. He put you down. And this just stirred up even more insecurities of feeling worthless.
Yeah, I guess I had this, insecurity and low self-esteem and feelings of worthlessness. And we know that when we feel that way, we seek out situations that make us feel more like that. And it's weird to look at things like that, but you see it over and over again.
Your dad? Did your dad play a part in it? Was he a distant man, worked a lot, or?
No, I was very close with my dad. Yeah, my dad took us and did things with us all the time. So I don't know where that. I can't really put that in there. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So
but you had this boyfriend who was abusive.
Something in me, yeah. He was definitely abusive. He definitely didn't care about me, and I allowed it to go on because of my codependency, and being stuck in that cycle of abuse was what felt normal to me.
And you talked about this in your testimony, because at this time you started drinking, and again, that false sense of confidence, that false sense of power.
Yeah.
But when you left high school, you did break up with the boyfriend. You started going.
How were her grades?
I did well. I did well. I even though I was going and doing all these things, I had a decent head on my shoulders, and I know God was still with me even in that time. Even if I wasn't turning towards him, he was still present.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to fill in a few things as we're moving on. Okay, go ahead.
You went to college right here in Long Beach, Long Beach City, and you were holding a job, paying for your own schooling and going to school, but you got an opportunity to get a better paying job, and you actually took that opportunity. Let's talk about that.
And were you still drinking?
You know, off and on, yes. Drinking was still a major part of my life. I hung with friends that's just what, it seemed like the norm.
But so you were still able to go to school and do these other things.
There's so many forms of alcoholism. There's non-functioning alcoholics, there's alcoholics that drink every day and function, and then you got like people like me that were weekend alcoholics, that we worked and we did what we needed to do to get by, and then once the weekend came, it was like, let's go party, I guess, and that,
I'm glad you broke that down. People
there's a misconception, that alcoholism looks like this, and it sure doesn't. There's a lot of ways it can rear its ugly head, and so,
and a lot of times you can be in denial because of the fact that you were able to hold I couldn't possibly have a problem because I can keep everything straight. So that was a way you could stay.
I didn't think I had a problem at all. No. I was going to Long Beach today. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I got presented with an application to become a longshoreman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I filled out the application and, needed the money.
How does somebody get... You're so beautiful. I mean... Not that anybody's a longshoreman that isn't, but you look like you'd be more of a model. Why would somebody come up to you and offer you to be a longshoreman?
My parents were struggling financially. They struggled financially almost since I can remember. And so my neighbor was a mechanic down on the docks. And he offered the application to my mom first because my dad was starting over in a new career. And
so they stayed together?
My mom and dad are still together, which is a blessing. But they knew financially my mom and dad could use the help.
Because I was wondering, nobody just walks up to a young girl on the college campus. You want to be a longshoreman?
No. So my neighbor was kind enough to say, I have this. If it could help your family, here it is. And that's a miracle because people pay money for those applications.
It's hard to get in.
Well, I got an opportunity reading your testimony when you sent it to me, finding out what a longshoreman is because I didn't know.
There you go. Fill it in. So what do they do?
Well, see, they work on the docks. But it's a culture. If you actually, I want you to touch on it because you're going to talk about that culture because at the time they didn't allow women.
Oh.
Well, I was in this very weird transitional time on the waterfront where there was a lawsuit and there was a few women, but not. There's a lot of nepotism, a lot of family, bringing family members in and such.
It's a closed society, isn't it?
Well, back then, coming up through the ranks, but present day, it's open to everybody now. But this lawsuit called the Golden Decree came down, and they had to fill a certain quota of women. And so I was in that weird transitional part when I was 19 years old, working in this waterfront that I didn't know what it was either. I'm like, sure, it pays good money. It's a union job. I will take it. But coming in,
you got down there, girl.
Holy smokes! Yeah, I got down there. I was like, what is this? It's a whole nother world. It really is. If you've ever driven over the Vincent Thomas Bridge and you see the sea of containers,
doesn't look like something
it's a trip. It's a whole nother world. But it's so cool at the same time because coming in, there was a lot of animosity. It wasn't good at first.
I'm sure the men were very, very upset.
They were upset. And then they didn't know how to act with a woman on the waterfront. So there was many of them that would just hit on you, and you would, and it still happens.
Were you lifting? Doing what were you doing?
Yeah, so you do pretty much everything. You get dispatched, and so when you get your ticket out of that window, it says you're doing this today, and you can't prepare for that. You get thrown into a job, and you learn kind of on the job, and so you could be driving and parking containers, and I touched on that in my testimony.
And let's talk about that because I thought that was very interesting.
Those big, huge.
And because you're not trained before you take the job, they give you the ticket. And you go do your job. Yeah. And you had to learn. Let's talk about the first day when you had that forklift.
Yeah, well, the first time I was just under the hook, we call it. That's under the big hammerhead crane, and it's called under the hook. That's longshore talk. But and so there's all these things flying around your head, and I'm just sitting there and like white-knuckled grabbing onto. I was a clerk at that time, so I was doing paperwork. But the second job I got, and that's where it was really something that just shook me up, was that I was parking containers and I did not know what I was doing. I'm driving my big tractor truck and I've got a container on the back and I'm like, what do I do with this? And people are like, go park it, and longshore talk.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
MF.
Yeah. There's a lot of F-bombs being dropped on the docks. And so, you know, you got this 19-year-old intimidated girl, and I'm, you know, the foreman's telling me, go park it over there and come back and do it again. And it took me, I don't know, 30 minutes to park this container. I was getting stuck and jackknifing my truck.
And they were probably laughing at you and doing all kinds of stuff. I know they were.
Nobody would help.
What? The first time you parked it took you about 20 minutes to park it, and you got cussed out.
Yeah. I came back to the hook, and the foreman went, "Where have you been?" And he started screaming at me and cussing me out, and I wanted to cry, but you know there's that thing inside of you that's like, I'm not going to let him see me cry. And it was frustrating, and after that shift, I didn't go back for a long time to dispatch. I was like, this is not for me.
It's traumatizing.
It's traumatizing, and
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous, and I didn't have the family support because my neighbor gave me the application. So many people have the support of a family unit helping you. You know, they would come in and they would show you what to do.
You took the food out of somebody else's mouth.
Man, so it was tough. It was tough, but God's used all those things to toughen me up for the ministry He had prepared for me since the beginning of time.
I think so. That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. So,
and let's talk about that, because even though your position was now much better, you were making more money, you would think.
But where'd she end up going from there?
Same place.
Yeah. I stopped going. I went back to the school thing, and then something just was drawing me back there. I was like, you know what, and I'm stubborn. So I was like, I'm not going to be defeated here. Okay. I did go back to the waterfront, and I started making friends. And I think, you know, God has a way of, bringing you back to where you're supposed to be. And I know that I am supposed to be there. And the waterfront has become...
So you're still there?
I'm still there. Yeah, wow. I'm a Class A now. And so I can park a container with my eyes closed now.
Wow.
And I've driven the small cranes in the yard. And I really like driving forklifts, and I love machinery. There's a sense of empowerment that comes with being a woman and being able to do these things, because
we look at each other, this is amazing.
It's cool. It's good
work, I tell you that much. I'm not laughing.
I am so blessed by this job.
Once you get in, because we have a couple of friends that are in there, once you get in, it's good money. Were you laid off when they were going through that strike time? A lot of people were.
Yeah, so it got slow, but because I'm a Class A, I've been down there since 1997. I've put in my time, and so I'm now a Class A, and so I have, it's a totem pole there.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So I'm kind of towards the top of the totem pole. So I'm blessed to be where I'm at. I'm blessed to be able to earn a good income and support my family. We'll talk about, I went through a divorce, and without that job, I wouldn't have been able to supply for my family, my 3 kids that I had at that time. So it has been a real blessing. And the insurance. We have wonderful medical, and so I am blessed.
Wow.
Well, let's talk about that, because even though your position was growing and you were making better money, you decided to drop out of college, but you started dating somebody at work.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask
that. And again, that relationship just took a turn. Let's talk about that relationship.
Yeah, so again, we'll go back to the alcohol. There was a lot of drinking in our downtime. So as a casual, which is where you start at in the longshore industry, you have to work your way up and you have to put in your time. And so there's a lot of waiting around time. And, for a codependent and a drinker, you kind of find that group that's doing that. And
on the job site?
No. When we weren't working,
you get together at the end.
Yeah, if we did not get a job that day, because you kind of have to wait for the jobs to come to you, and if you did not, if you weren't fortunate enough to get a job that day, we would go to the bar and drink.
Okay.
And so I met my ex-husband that way. We started dating, and our relationship really was centered around alcohol.
Right.
So,
was it abusive too?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, looking back, as you're going through it, there was red flags, but you don't label it as abusive. You don't ever, and me being, I felt like I was a strong woman. Didn't ever want to think about being abused.
When we're doing this show, we're trying to tie it in for people. So people are looking at you thinking, okay, now how did you end up with all these alcoholics and all these abusive people, and you come from a church family, and you didn't see that. But sometimes when we come in church families, feelings are stifled. Would you say that in your family you weren't able, like you said, you hid, you weren't able to be honest with a lot of things? So when you come from a strict family where feelings are not able to be processed, that's a setup for an alcoholic relationship.
Totally.
See, that's why I'm trying to, because some people are going, well, there's no alcoholics in my family, but if you're shut down and you're not able to express your feelings.
Yeah, it's
because that's what alcoholism
tool of the
is.
enemy, you know, to feel like because I'm a Christian, my life needs to look perfect, because that's not the case in most scenarios. And because I go to church, I need to present myself and my family a certain way. There's, you know, just because we're Christians or we serve God doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect life. That's not true.
And that's why with the church, we're trying to tell people at church, look, when you don't give your children a voice and allow them to be real and have problems, you're setting them up for these addictive, closed systems of where that's what alcoholism is.
You run and hide and you do it in the dark.
You do it in the dark. So that's kind of why I wanted to kind of tie that in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on that because even knowing and seeing the red flags when he proposed to you, you still said yes.
Yeah.
And you knew you didn't love him.
Yeah. It was... Yeah.
What'd you get married for? Just for the security, you thought, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still have a hard time processing it. There was red flags. I wasn't in love with them. I was an insecure girl. On the waterfront, too, having that stability of a man.
Husband there,
that was a big, and I was, when I got married, I was 23, so I was still, young. I was still a woman on the waterfront, and it brought me tremendous security.
Right.
My husband works down here, so, back off.
Right.
So there was a lot of bad reasons to get married. Yes, we both had good incomes. Oh, the thought of being able to buy a house and live the quote-unquote American dream. We're all distracted by that American dream. And
we sure are, girl. Everybody's calling me. It should have been this way. My life should have looked like this. Who said that? I'm glad you said that.
Society says that. Yeah. Right. So, it's been an interesting journey. So, yes, through that marriage, and there was 9 years of marriage and 3 kids out of it, but there was still alcohol. And I decided that I wanted to turn from the alcohol. I didn't want that to be the center of my life when my daughter was born, and she's 12 now. And I thought, there's nothing more beautiful in this entire world, right? And the alcohol just started to seem less important, I had something now to fill that void, and it was my daughter.
So he kept on. So I know we got to move along.
No, I just wanted to touch on, because I think this is kind of where God really opened your eyes. It was the trip that you took to Vegas with him, where you thought, oh, maybe, you saw some hope.
Yeah, well, I still held on
Vegas?
to
That's a good.
Well, no, we had this disastrous kind of marriage where it was a lot of fighting, a lot of chaos, a lot of selfishness, and a lot of godlessness.
Right.
Their hope just got lost somewhere in that mix.
So you weren't thinking of God at all at that point.
I would cry out to him when I was really in pain. I would say, God, this is not the way I saw my life. We had the house, we had the great
money,
jobs,
the money.
We had these cute kids, but there was nothing but pain inside. I felt empty. I felt lost. And so, picture perfect on the outside, but falling apart on the inside. And I cried out to God several times, and I still had held on to hope that he would be able to repair the broken marriage. So we took a trip to Las Vegas as a couples. We had 3 kids, so we didn't get away a lot. And so we took this trip, and I thought, well, we can, maybe reconnect. And it just didn't happen. He went one way, I went another, and it kind of was the unraveling of, and maybe the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just like, this is just, it's over. I was depressed there. I was like, there's no more hope. And at that time, another turn happened to take place. Another, one of my brother's friends showed up, and I don't know if you have questions to ask about that. This is the...
Well, I just want to touch on that because your brother's friend shows up, and you spent some time with him, and then you went home. Nothing happened with him, but you went home realizing, you know what, this is just not working out.
Yeah.
But you were also fearful of the divorce, and in God's eyes. And that's what I wanted to touch on. In God's eyes, you didn't want to disappoint him because you had this fear of God. So let's touch on that.
So this guy was a romantic thing, but you didn't allow it to happen.
I just had, living in an abusive marriage for 9 years, and then a guy shows me
Prince Charming, here he comes.
Right? And so we hung out because I was very depressed. I was crying, and I think this guy, who's now my husband, by the way.
Oh, wow.
It didn't develop.
He did Prince Charming. Okay.
He was, but I think out of he is a great man with a great heart, and I think he felt bad for me. There's this wrecked girl who's fallen apart, and so we not that God can use anybody anywhere at a blackjack table, sat and we're playing cards, but just having conversation, and something in me clicked, like, this is the way a relationship should be. This, I deserve better than what I'm getting. It kind of was just something in me that just snapped, and so I went home and I did. And I felt guilty because I thought about this man after I went home, and I thought about my marriage, and it was something that just it was a catalyst to make me think about a lot of things, about change, yes. And so it was, and I don't not believe that God used that in some way, And so, yes, I told my husband that I wanted a divorce. I don't love you anymore. My heart is hard. I sought out pastoral counsel at that point, and, of course they don't
condone that at all.
They don't want to condone divorce in any way. And so I tried to work through that. And then my shame and guilt about becoming divorced, being raised in this, if you read in the Bible, it speaks so highly against it. And so I was so stuck, and it created just this depression in my life that was unbearable.
And I want to talk about that because that was the beginning of your bottom, because then you ran into this man again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So he wasn't in your life all through this. So he wasn't the one that got you out of the house into his house.
No.
He kind of went his way.
Yeah, we went our separate ways, and I did what I thought I needed to do, was separate from my ex-husband to see how I would feel, what it would look like. I moved in with my mom and dad with my 3 children, and I felt a little bit of peace, but I also felt all these other conflicting emotions. When you go through a divorce, and you said you went through one.
Yes, it's not
like
a
death. It's like a death, and it really just turns you. There's no words for the emotions you feel.
There's not, no. And then you have kids, because I had 2 small sons, and the third one came later. But yeah,
it was really very painful. And and then moving in with mom and dad with 3 kids. Holy smokes! That's just another mess. They're kind of hovering over you, not knowing what to do and not knowing what to say. And I quickly found a rental home and moved myself and my 3 kids into this rental home. And that is where I hit my rock bottom. I was being spiritually attacked. I felt guilt and shame. I have parents that are still married, so I was feeling guilty about doing this to my children. My children were my biggest.
And was your ex-husband involved with the kids?
Yeah, we were, and that's where I became the most depressed, is when they would go to their dads, and I would be left feeling so empty. Alone. And that's where I just started falling apart, and the enemy started attacking me, saying, "It'd be better if you were just dead. End it now. Your kids will be better off. No one will miss you. Everybody thinks you're an awful person anyways." I was being attacked in the most awful way. And I was like, I was listening. You're right. You are so right. How can I end this? And it was then I looked for a way to end my life. I was like going through cupboards and looking for some pills to take. And I speak on this in my testimony. God had a different plan. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and a knock on my door, and it was my dad.
Wow.
Job got canceled, and he saw me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, I was a mess. I was sobbing, and I was on the floor in like fetal position. I mean, it was like an outer body experience. I didn't even recognize myself. It was so awful. I was like rocking. It was crazy. My dad showed up, and I was like, "Oh Lord, you don't know what I was just about to do. Right. I don't know if I would have done something or not. I really don't."
Right.
And my dad just sat and talked with me, and he just went over scripture and about his own shortcomings, and that it's okay, you're going to get through this. And gosh, I'm going to cry talking about it, but it was another pivotal moment. And I said, I need help.
So you saw God's love and
mercy. Saw God's love and mercy right there.
Your father demonstrated that, not only the power, but you saw his love.
It was divine intervention. God showed up even though I had turned my back on him. He pursues us even though we are not seeking him. He will pursue us, and he will offer ways out.
And I think, I think you're also giving people, because the pastor was talking about that today. Sometimes you have children who you can do the right things, and your father was there in your life. He wasn't abusive, and yet you made choices. So that might be giving some parents out there a little bit of grace, that it's not always your fault.
Yeah.
Our kids do things.
Yeah.
They have a will. So your dad was there. Thank God he demonstrated love.
I know. And so
that's what we want to do here, demonstrate love.
And that's when I got connected with Celebrate Recovery. So a friend had told me several times about this program, and I was like, I don't need that. I don't like counseling.
Right.
I'm not going to go say, hi, my name's Shannon, I'm an alcoholic. You know, this the whole thing we make up in our head, and it's our pride and our ego.
It still doesn't sound pretty, but
I know.
But it's true, though, right?
It's true.
Yeah. And so I got connected with Celebrate Recovery at Park Crest in Long Beach, and I did, like a whole year of, and that was just the most life-changing thing. I am such an advocate of Celebrate Recovery.
I am too. I went through it too. You get sisters. You get a whole lot of connection and healing. Well, I'm sure this will take us to the ministry.
Well, I wanted to just touch a little more because you wrote in your testimony how God wasn't done with you yet. You actually had your 4th child towards the tail end of your step study.
Sure. Yeah, so Drake and I did reconnect, and I was separated and I was living on my own. I was not yet divorced, which played into some of that guilt and shame. Right. But through Celebrate Recovery, my life started taking a turn. I became pregnant. Drake and I, we wanted to get married, but the legal paperwork wasn't in place yet. But thank God I was in Celebrate Recovery, because it was teaching me about God's love and grace and His forgiveness, and that God knows our hearts. Right. He really does. The world wants to look at you and say, you're a Christian. Look the way you're living your life. That's not very Christian, But I knew I was working towards something.
You're working towards something, trying to come out of. Right.
Yes, and it's amazing. And through that, through my pain and through all that, God has just given me revelation about other people. But yes, I had my 4th child. His name is Daniel.
So how many you have? You have a daughter?
Daughter and 3 sons.
And 3 sons, okay.
And so my oldest is 12 and my youngest is 3. So it's
you are still in the thick of it, girl. And then you're out there.
Shoot, it's crazy.
You got a lot going on. You still got young kids.
Only God sustains me, I'm telling you. So I graduated, got my chip from Step Study. I gave a small testimony, but it was after that something significant. I mean, God was leading me up to something, and He still is. I mean, He reveals things at the time I'm ready, the time we are ready.
Just gives a little glimpse.
A little glimpse.
Right.
So it was about a month after I graduated from the Celebrate Recovery, and I missed having something, because you get so committed to these weekly things. I missed, and I was going to church at Park Crest, but I was seeking something else, something small, something in personal relationship, and I found Women's Bible Study, and I got linked up with that. And it was about the first month into Women's Bible Study, and I had my son Daniel. I was going back to work, so all these weird transitions were happening in my life. And I woke up one morning, and it was like the Holy Spirit was in the room with me. My alarm went off. It was the first day I was going back to work, and God's presence was all over me, and it was as though He was saying, "You're restored, daughter. You're restored. You sought me out, and I am here." And I just was weeping, and it was not sad weeping. It was so much joy. I had joy, and I've never experienced God like that before, where I think the Holy Spirit was just filling me and telling me I was going to be okay. And I vowed to God in that moment. I said, "God, I know this is you. I will do whatever you want me to do. I am your servant. Use me for your purpose." And I said it out loud, and amazingly enough, unless you're ready to go out and do what you say,
you better not say it.
You better not say it, because God will show up that same day.
So you're driving down the street.
I went to work.
You hit an intersection. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I went to work on the docks that day, and I'm on my way home, and I hit an intersection, and you'll know because you live in Lakewood.
Right.
Del Amo and Lakewood Boulevard by the mall.
Oh, I know exactly. That's where I am.
Yeah. And there's a homeless man standing on the center divider with a sign. We all encounter these people almost every day of our lives living in big cities. And, I did what I thought the good thing to do, the good Christian thing to do, and I rolled down my window and I gave him $2, and I rolled my window back up, patting myself on the back, saying, "Good job, you did your good deed for the day." And none other than God shows up, and I mean, it was crazy. I felt a little cuckoo. I heard in my heart, "Talk to him," and my head said, "I just gave him the money. I did what I needed to do. I judged. He probably wants to get drunk or high, and he doesn't want nothing to do with me." Those things were running through my head, and then I was physically shaken the second time "talk to him" was so bold, and I was like, "Ooh, I better listen." So I now awkwardly rolled down my window, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" And he said, I'm all right. I just hit some hard times. And I'm like, I know what that's like, and really? Again, there was a moment where I was like, I know. I've been there. I've hit those hard times. And so I said, I know $2 isn't going to change your day or your life, but how can I help you more? And before I can even stop the words flying out of my mouth, I said, I'll bring you some food sometime. Where do you stay? And he said, I stay at Lincoln Park.
Oh, wow. So that's how it started.
That's how it started. And he said, I stay at Lincoln Park. And before I drove away at this enormously long red light, he said, I'm telling you, God is strange the way he works. He said, bring a lot. There's a lot of people.
Wow.
Okay. It was like putting the knife in and turning it. So I was there judging him. I was there saying, I thought I knew something about this man, which I did not. Right. And he had, at that present time, more compassion than I had. Wow. So that, I drove away. That was the launching point for Beacon for Him Ministries. I drove home, and I was just a mess. I was weeping and crying, and I was...
How long has that been when you did that?
That was September of 2013.
Okay, so this is really new.
It's new, yeah. It's new. I drove home, and I was God has, fast-forwarded what his purpose and his plan for my life is. You see what kind of world we're living in right now. God is moving in great ways. He needs people to say, I am here, use me for your purpose. And when you say that, he's going to show up.
And let's talk about that, because you started Beacon for Him Ministries. Tell us what that ministry is and what it's for.
Yeah, so we started, I started by myself going to Lincoln Park, and I was passing out, I had a wagon because I have 4 kids, and I opened my wagon up and I started distributing food.
And the kids are helping you, obviously.
Well, the kids weren't in the picture yet. I was doing this on my off time. I would go to work, and then I would go by the park, because I work, the docks are literally right there. So I would just pass by, and before I went that first day, I was scared. I was nervous. I was like, I don't know these people. I don't know how they're going to receive me. God, I need you to show up. If this is what you want me to do and I'm obeying you, you got to be here, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So he met me every time. And so I pulled my wagon up the street, and I had waters, and I stopped at the grocery store and bought little mini muffins.
That's not cheap. That's a lot of...
No, but I felt God was calling me to do this thing. And so I was pulling my wagon and passing out things and shaking people's hands and saying, nice to meet you. And it was there. I sat on, distributed everything, and one of the men helped me. One of the homeless men. I never found that guy, because I now know his name is to be Chris, but he wasn't there for the one man that started the whole thing, Chris, on the center divider. I never saw him for months.
Oh, wow.
I was looking for this one. He was a catalyst. And I was like, was he an angel? And, my dad pointed me to a scripture in Hebrews, I believe it is. It says, always be kind to strangers, for you never know when they may be entertaining angels. Right. And so I believe an angel. I believe Chris was entertaining an angel that day. Just those words of significance, there's a lot of people. That's what changed me. Yeah, he could have said, bring me a steak, and I would have been like, whatever. But he said something profound. Bring a lot. There's a lot of people. And that's what stuck with me. And so I believe... That
sounds like a mission statement to me.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I met some other friends, and I sat on the wall, and we had these conversations that they were nothing like I assumed they were. These people were just people that were broken like I was. And I shared my story with them, and we talked so much about faith. There's so much faith in the homeless community.
They have to.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to touch on, because you're a nonprofit organization with the mission to share God's love and the hope with homeless and at-risk men, women, and children in our community by providing personal relationships with them and loving them right where you find them.
That's right.
And it's interesting because you're talking about personal relationships. You're not an organization that just comes, drops off the food, and leaves. You actually minister to them.
Are you under Parkcrest?
Parkcrest has helped us tremendously. They have actually been one of our greatest supports. We're a separate organization from Parkcrest, but they have been major supporters in helping us get to where we are now. They've supported us.
Well, what's interesting is you didn't stop there. You didn't just minister to them, because not only do you offer food and meals to them and clean clothes, and with library access to computers and books and church services, but you also started to celebrate recovery for them.
Yes.
Which is
beautiful.
Amazing.
Look at your face is just glowing.
It's been so hard because it's a lot. I have 4 kids, and it's been such a weight on my family, and really, but celebrate recovery, I knew it needed to be there because it's what changed my life.
Yeah, and you were saying that earlier. God has to change people's lives.
He does.
He has to bring it from the inside out.
That's right. And it's not enough to bring food. You have to bring spiritual change. People are dead spiritually, and there's nothing going to change that until you bring God and get him in the mix.
And structure, too, because I know we're
running out of time.
Well, what's interesting is that somebody from your organization, I didn't know your organization yet, put it on Facebook that they needed a testimony, and they put it under Kathy Taylor. And when Kathy Taylor sends me out, I hate doing my testimony. I'll be honest with you, I do not like it. But when she sends me out, again, I'm obedient to God speaking through her.
Right.
So I contacted the person and said, when do you need me? She said, July 12th. I said, it's a Sunday. After the show, I will be there.
Oh, my gosh.
Not knowing that is your...
It's our Celebrate Recovery.
Are you kidding? What? Wow.
That's super cool.
Wow.
That is how God works, and I hope to eventually get also Lolita giving her testimony as well.
Do you have a lot of people who come in and to the Celebrators just kind of...
It's just forming. I think we get about 20 people, and many of them are homeless. So your testimonies are so important.
Wow. That
to change
is so
their lives.
important.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that is amazing.
You got a lot doing, and plus you got to come in here and share, and you got here on time. This is awesome.
So the show is coming to a close. We like to ask you, what does joy in my house mean to you? The premise of the show is the joy that we have in the midst of our challenges, in the midst of our struggles, or in the midst of our successes. So what does joy in my house mean to you in today's day and age?
Oh gosh, it's being able to see God's kingdom here on earth. You know, Jesus asked us to pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And joy in my house means seeing God's kingdom and being able to witness and be a part of his kingdom here on earth. And that is us when we set out to do what God has called us to do. It brings so much joy. It is hard, but there is a joy that you can't buy.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Very well
Thank
said.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Van Eric, for helping out the beginning of the show.
This is Joy in My House, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to catch us live every Sunday here at noon on WWW LA Talk Live. I want to thank our in-studio guest, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. My co-host, Lolita Robinson. And my producer, who was a host today,
yes, he was.
Dan Eric Marshall. This is Joy in My House. I want you to catch us live every Sunday here at noon with life-changing stories of hope, inspiration, and talent that will inspire you. This is Joy in My House. You guys have a blessed day.